Morning, guys.
Hey, good morning.
How's it going?
So far, so good.
All right. Sounds like a good deal to me. Okay. Branson, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, sir. I'm doing good.
All right. Beautiful day out there.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Let's wait one more minute here and we'll get started. I'm going to maybe meet the governor today, which should be interesting. He's on campus here at ECU today doing something. Shaking hands and smiling, right? That's what they do. I still think if a politician just sneered at people and was nasty, I think they'd probably be every bit as popular. This crazy world that we're in now, right? Hi, Tia.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I'm going to start my soliloquy. So I think it's been about a year ago, I was participating in a program at UNC Chapel Hill about entrepreneurship. And they had some of the folks that had either gone to UNC or somehow connected. A lot of them were in the graduate school, I think. But they had one guy, and I got to figure out his name because all I know are the facts of his story. I don't know his name, or there's a lot I don't know about what he had to say. But I have to say, I was really surprised by what he had to say. So this guy, a relatively young guy, I think he was probably in his 30s, might be in his early 40s. He had built some kind of technology company, and it sold for $348 million, which to me is a lot of money. And but what he said next, I could not believe. He was so depressed when he got the news that the sale had gone through that he could not get off the floor of his living room to go to the meeting to get, to kind of close the deal or whatever. He was just so depressed, and he had no idea at that moment exactly what was going on and why he had that feeling. But it turns out that this is, I won't say it's common, but it's relatively common. And it's in an area that I think very few people, it's hard to feel sympathy for someone who just got $348 million. It's just human nature. But it turns out that this is a giant problem in the entrepreneurship space. And it's not just people getting gigantic checks. It's all manner of things, which maybe some of you all have dealt with also. I know I have dealt with it personally. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do the first part of a two-part series on entrepreneurship and mental health. And we're going to hear from a couple of people today. One of them is the founder of Techstars, among many other things that he has done. I'm pretty sure he's a billionaire, maybe more than that. But nonetheless, he's got quite a story to tell, and I think everybody will appreciate it. So let me do my screen sharing thing. Okay, there we go. All right. So Techstars is an organization that works with a lot of entrepreneurs, to say the least. I forget the number, but it's in the thousands at this point. They started in 2006, and they've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs. So we're going to start off hearing from Brad Feld, FELD. Brad is the co-founder of Techstars. And if you remember the guy yesterday who was talking to us, the VC guy was talking about ways to blow up your company. That guy is a partner of Brad's in a group called Foundry Group, and that's a venture capital fund that's based in Boulder, Colorado. So this guy's been around for quite a while, and I think you'll find the story interesting. I hope you will.
I would say I was a pretty typical sort of nerdy, precocious kid. You know, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. My dad's a doctor, my mom's an artist. Right, there was a sense of being successful was important, and education was important, learning was important. I had a pretty deep introvert streak, so I was very comfortable externally. I was very social and had plenty of friends and, hung out and did things. But I really liked being alone reading a book. When I graduated from high school, I went from Dallas to Boston, and I went to school at MIT.
I think one of the really beautiful things about being friends first is you build this level of trust. We really knew each other and knew each other in different contexts.
I knew her well as a friend, and I found her fascinating intellectually. She was, incredibly smart, but also across a very wide range of things.
One of the things that I remember so much about college was he worked harder than anybody. And at MIT, that's saying a lot because everybody's really achievement-oriented. Everybody was the valedictorian of their class. Everybody had perfect SAT scores, and he still took twice the course load of the required course load and trained for a marathon and just really worked really, really hard, and I admired that. I admire a work ethic. So when you're friends and you admire a work ethic, that's one thing, and then in a relationship that can get to be too extreme. And we would bill 100-hour work weeks, which meant that all the administrative time and all the sleeping time wasn't on that, but it was extreme. That was extreme.
On today's fundraising segment, we have Brad Feld.
Brad Feld,
the man who does not need an introduction.
We were very successful as a business, financially very successful. Anybody on the outside looking in would say, what's wrong with you? Like you live in Boulder, Colorado, you got, nice house, you got a nice car, you got a great wife. It's easy to describe it at one level and hard at another. So the feeling for me of depression starts with what I could only describe as kind of a hole in my gut. It wasn't that I felt an emotion that was a negative emotion. I didn't feel sadness or sorrow, but it was almost the absence of joy. It's like I've got this thing missing. I want this essential element of existence I don't have in my current existence. And I'm worried I'm not going to have it again.
The real crisis moment was we were on vacation in Sedona, Arizona, and he was driving the rental car, and he said he was considering pulling into oncoming traffic. So a really serious suicidal ideation. And I made him stop the car, and we traded places, and I said, I know some things, and I've studied some things, and I've done some therapy, and I've done a lot of work, but this is way out of my league. And when we get back to Boston, you're going to get professional help.
I remember feeling periods of incredible anxiety, and I had incredible shame around the idea that I would see a psychiatrist, and incredible shame around the idea that I would take medication, incredible shame around the idea that I might actually acknowledge that I was depressed. And there were very few people that I could talk to about this. Fortunately, I could talk to Amy about it. I could talk to my business partner, Dave, who was, even though he didn't really know what to do with it at the time, was incredible in terms of just being a supportive friend and partner. And what Dave would do is he wouldn't say to me, do you want to go for a walk? He would find out when I had a free hour on my calendar. He'd poke his head in my office and say, let's go for a walk. And I'd look at my calendar, I'd see I had an hour available. I'd be like, great. And we'd go for a walk. And a lot of times we wouldn't even talk about anything. He wouldn't start a conversation. We'd just walk. And sometimes a conversation would emerge, and sometimes I'd start to talk about something, and he'd build off of it. But he didn't make the walk, he didn't make the hour that we'd do a loop be about me or fixing me or how am I doing or what do I need. It could turn into that, and sometimes it did, and sometimes we just walked for an hour. Even when I was in a really low point, it was an introduction and a reminder to me of something that might be good, right? That might feel like joy against this touch point. And so doing simple things like that are very powerful.
You have to take care of yourself as well. It's the put on your own oxygen mask first. And that's my friends, being outside in nature, watching the sunrise with my dogs, just really intense self-care. It's a gift for me to be strong and happy, even when he's really depressed. I think my path is to be a truth teller, and Brad is a truth teller. Trust the journey. It's gonna turn out okay. It's gonna turn out great, actually.
Okay, well, that's Brad Feld. We're gonna watch one more today, and this is Andrea Perdomo, which I think will also be relatable.
I've never been one to follow the same path as everybody else. I was always known as like the wild one. Ball of energy, a little sassy. I'm not afraid to take risks. In fact, I probably chase those types of adventures. So I'm originally from Colombia, South America, and I actually moved to the US when I was 6 years old. My whole family and I migrated here. My childhood's a little bit different because I grew up in a very different social class, I would say, as well. My parents just wanted a better life for us. The reason we moved to the US was actually for safety and security reasons. My grandmother was actually kidnapped when I was 5, and we spent about 8 months trying to get her back. We went a whole month actually before we knew where she was. And that was kind of the last straw for my dad and my family, as we needed to move, and it was really a matter of like having a better, brighter future. All of my siblings and I felt this feeling of we had to make our dad proud and make our mom proud, just because of everything they'd been through and everything that they had put themselves through just so that we could have a better life. Even since high school, like I was always the type of person that would stay up all night and study for tests because I had to get a good grade and make dad proud and all of that. When I moved to Denver, I met Kevin. We actually met at a bar. The first thing that really stood out to me was just how kind and generous he is. Truthfully, I fell in love with his heart first.
I remember hearing that she was going on a camping trip with my friends, and I had just met her a few weeks before. And so I packed up all my things real fast and dropped what I was doing on Saturday just to go on this camping trip to see her. She didn't have a backpack, and she was just carrying everything in her arms. But she did it with a smile, and she was laughing the whole time. Like, wow, this person is willing to do new things, even if they're beyond her comfort zone.
Kevin was there from day one. Everything really happened super fast. Like within that first year, I had met Kevin and I had met Jackie, who ended up being the co-founder at Revelar. People should have the right to feel safe. And with Revelar, you are now empowered to live your life to its fullest potential. At the time, it was just the two of us working on it, and we were kind of figuring it out from scratch. We were solely driven by passion, right? So we were, in our minds, like creating a product that, for lack of a better word, was supposed to save the world, right? Like, how do we keep people safe? We had people write in and tell us how important our product was, and I think that just made us fight harder, but also that led to a lot more stress. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to not let people down. You know, there was definitely a lot of great things that came from it, but it did feel like I was a little bit like suffocating myself in a way. It felt like I had to keep going, like trapped a little bit. Sorry, you just made me like tear up. Sorry, you're right, I haven't processed. It's been still really hard. You know, I did lose friendships. I lost a lot of time that I could have had with people. But in that moment, I completely had prioritized the company and the mission and everything we stood for. And a lot of people say, right, like, don't take it so personally, but it's super hard because you just given so much to that company. So my co-founder was actually really good at it. She would look at me and be like, you're sick or you're tired, like go home, take a half day, like go rest, like go take care of yourself. But a lot of times, like, it's hard to catch those moments for yourself.
The work world started bleeding into the home life. I would say I felt very alone. All you really want to do is see the person you love, but you also know that that person is trying to start a business, save that business, save jobs. I just knew I hadn't seen Andrea, the real person inside of there, for quite a bit of time. That person had been sucked into the laptop.
And my husband actually looked at me and he closed my computer and he was like, you need to go to bed. Like, you look exhausted, you look like you're not well. And that was a pretty big wake-up call for me, right? Like, do I need to work this late? Like, how can I be with you if I'm not with you? In a lot of situations, I was there physically, but mentally, my head was always somewhere else.
We know we're supposed to take care of ourselves. We know we're supposed to work out. We know we're supposed to eat healthy. We know we're supposed to go on walks, do art. But it simply felt like there was never time to do those things because we would be letting someone down if we took time for ourselves.
Starting a company is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know, make sure that it's something that you're passionate about. You still get stressed out, right? Like, it's life. Life is meant to be a little stressful. That's how you become a better person and how you get to know yourself better. When I compare myself to how I feel now versus back then, I was definitely overworked, overstressed. I've learned that now, right? Like, how important it is to actually spend time with the things that matter the most to you, so you can continue to be your authentic self without letting stress and burnout take over.
Okay, let me see if I can figure out how to turn this off. Sorry. There we go. Okay. I don't know if any of you can relate to this kind of all in, to the exclusion of everything else in your life because you feel like whatever, a lot of people are counting on you, or just your personality, or can anyone relate or want to comment on that sort of issue, I guess, or attitude? Come on now. Pia, how about you? Kaim is used to me calling on. Go ahead, Kaim.
Well, honestly, it does relate, and it relates a lot more through this cohort than it did before. A lot of you may know that Fox 8 did a little segment on us right at Christmas, and I was extremely reluctant to do that. but yeah, all of a sudden it felt like an avalanche when that story aired and the orders started coming in and all my retail shops started calling and needing and wanting and I'm looking around going, how in the heck am I going to get all this done? So yeah, it was extremely overwhelming, but it was a blessing to say the least. It really jump started and boosted our business to a whole nother level. And we did get through it through a lot of effort and help with the family. But yeah, it was a moment, and I try not to dwell on a lot of the negative. We just keep putting one foot in front of the other. But yeah, it gravitated this go around a lot more than I had in the past. So
How did you, like, what did you do to take care of yourself? If you're comfortable sharing, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
honestly, Dennis, you don't. I didn't. When that story aired at 7:30 that morning, my phone started going off at 7:40 and it went off all day long. I finally shut it off about 11:30. My wife said, if I hear that one more time, she said, I may lose my mind. But we were working honestly from 6:30 in the morning to 12, 1, 2 o'clock every night for 2 weeks,
Oh,
trying to keep up with everything that we had because it was just an onslaught and an avalanche of things that just hit us. And
was this production? You were making your
Yes.
product, or?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And my retail shops were a little upset because they weren't notified that this was coming out. But like I explained to them, I said there was no time. He contacted me on Wednesday. He shot it on shot it on Friday, aired it on Tuesday. I barely had enough time to get what I needed to get done before that all started. And that was things that I had already promised and needed to get, have in the pipeline. So yeah, it was a little bit crazy, but looking back now I can say, okay, look, we did survive it. We did do it. We'll be better prepared next time. So there's a lot of things that we learned and positives we took away from it. But yeah, there was no time to reflect on anything, but let's get this done. What's the next thing we've got to do in this process? So I could see how that could turn into a longer period of time than just the 2 weeks that we were in, for Christmas. Yeah, then I might have lost my mind. I don't know what we would have done over that.
Yeah.
But,
How did you find, like, how did this all come about that you got the TV show
Yeah.
to be aware of? How did all that happen?
apparently, Brad Jones, one of the anchors at Fox 8, was shopping at one of the shop over at the Extra Ingredient and Friendly Center and saw my product, and he looked at it. He read the little blip on the back and he said, you know what? I bet there's a pretty cool story here. So he reached out to me, actually called on Tuesday and left me a voicemail that I did not get until he called me later and said, I left you a message yesterday. And I went back and looked, and I'm like, John Brown, there it is. But I didn't get the notification, so I wasn't looking for it. And then he just kept pushing. I kept saying, we're kind of busy. I don't have time. I'm really not sure. He was a dog with a bone. He was not going to quit till he had that story. And they did a wonderful job putting it together. I'm so pleased that we actually went through this. But yeah, it put some tension on the household for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Anyone else wanna chime in here?
I would say for me, I started in her beauty movement toward the end of 2020. So that's when the pandemic was going on in November. And I experienced stress because I did not at first have the support that I desired to have. So I felt like I was doing everything by myself and trying to figure everything out. And I felt like I was somewhat overworking in a way to where my life was kind of out of balance because there were other things that I'm involved with in my personal life. I volunteer a lot. So I at that time I dealt with a high level of stress. We had our first event, and that was my first time of really hosting at that capacity. And I was dealing with the back end of things primarily, again, solo. And so what helped me, first of all, I had to get still and I had to recognize what was going on and acknowledge the fact that I felt the way I felt and talk to someone about it. I was in Raleigh at the time, living in Raleigh, and there's this trail. It goes throughout Durham and Raleigh. I would walk every day, with the exception of rain. And that really helped me. And also learning how to delegate and ask for help whenever I needed it. That helped as well.
Fantastic. I think that, and we all learn in different ways, but I think as you go through these experiences, then you can respond in a way to get what you need, whether it's, stuff you have to plan for in advance or whatever the issue is. But the only real truly dumb mistake is to not do anything when you feel like this and when this happens, and just do it again. Just like putting your head against a wall. And I think that preparation and awareness and what do you need, whether it's to go for a walk or really even find an assistant or somebody who can help or any number of things. But I do think it's important to find resources to help you do what you're trying to do. I think that's a really important piece. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, hey everyone, it's Sarah. Thank you so much.
Sarah, how are you?
Hi. Good, how are you guys?
We're good. We missed you. Where you been, girl?
Oh my God. Well, so
I
last
did
week,
too.
I was at a trade show, but I tried to, on my drive back, I tried to catch up on some of your classes from last week. They were really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up this topic today. It's so important. And I guess my perspective is that I'm sober and I've been in recovery for 16 and a half years. So, I kind of went through a lot of these struggles in my 20s and just had to really, for survival, develop mental health tools and self-care. Self-care is survival in my world. It's not like a luxury. It's not optional. Yeah. So there's things that I do every day to try to maintain balance. I don't think it's ever possible to really have this perfect balance of everything in our life. But I try to make sure, there's different buckets, and you can tell when one of the buckets is getting dangerously lower. And so, I'm also a mom, married, and I just really value physical wellness and, having a sense of community. I think it's really important that we have people we can connect with. I like going for walks with, other women, whether they're business owners or just people I can talk to. A lot of the work that I do is pretty much like working from home alone. I have events here and there, but I think just making sure that we have that community of support, even outside of work, is really important. And I guess just when it comes to using substances, even though I'm not using drugs and alcohol, there's always something. It's we have to have healthy outlets for when it just becomes too much during the day, or at the end of the day, we're just totally exhausted. We have this acronym HALT. It's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And so I'll often do that in my mind, because if I'm 2 out of, I think that's 5, right? Hungry, angry, lonely. No, it's 4. So if I'm 2 out of 4, that's kind of dangerous. Yeah. So I'm always checking in on those things. If I find inside I'm getting really wound up or really anxious, it's you know what? How did I sleep last night? Have I had a meal recently? Do I need to get some sunshine? Just go through that checklist is really helpful for me.
That's good. I think, I think it behooves us all to come up with really a strategic plan, a strategy for dealing with this. And you've done a lot of work, and that, I think it's beautiful the way you laid that out. I think some of you may be familiar with this. Recently, I think in the last couple of weeks, I saw a headline about apparently there's a class at Harvard called the Happiness Class, and it's the most popular class on campus there. And so I encourage any of you to Google that, and they have a whole bunch of research and stuff that they have learned about what makes you happy. I think this class has been going for 25 years, and I think they've got I don't know, 50,000 people that have participated in the study. It's really a big thing. But the one of the big things that they have in there is the importance of relationships and the importance of connecting with others. Particularly introverts who tend to want to be by themselves when they're stressed. That instinct is okay, like anything else in moderation, but connecting, being part of a community, there's some real practical outcomes from doing that that have to do with happiness. And, I think happiness is underappreciated. I think a lot of people feel like, well, why the hell should I like this job? It's a job, depending on how you were brought up and what your attitude about work is, or things that you do, you might find that it's okay to be happy. It's okay to figure out, what makes you happy and try to tap into that as much as you can, I think is a smart strategy.
Dennis, quick note on that. So one of the professors there, she's her name's Shen Haywood, and she traveled to Rwanda with me and a few other trainers back when I was building my nonprofit foundation. And together we created this resiliency model with genocide survivors in Rwanda. And so it's a combination of what they're teaching at that in that class at Harvard, but also just what so many people know when they've overcome. What we studied was, why does one person, we studied resiliency. And so really looking at, if you put two people in the exact same situation and circumstance, why does one come out stronger and one just falls apart? And so that's really the study of how you can build human resiliency, where happiness becomes more of a resilience and less about this temporary kind of exciting, kind of happiness, which is two different things.
Right.
And so that resilience to be an entrepreneur and to manage the roller coaster and the ups and downs, I think is super important. And just to kind of manage expectations too. One thing I just wanted to kind of a question, which is, I'm reading this book called, I don't know if you recommended it, but it's called Blitzscaling, and I'm reading it right now, and it's—
That wasn't me, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm only maybe a quarter way through, but I'm so fired up about it. And again, it's okay, how, if we're heading into this kind of rapid scale with our business, whether it's blitzscaling or fast scaling, and it starts to look okay, I'm mapping out the next year, and this is going to be my life. This is going to be 24/7, throw down, no room for anything else, let's go, blah, blah, blah. And so I find myself sometimes getting into that thinking where it's whoa, okay, how can we do this in a quote unquote balanced way and still make time for family and still make time for walks and all that? Because I think a lot of those examples of tech startups are 25-year-old, we don't need to sleep, we're just going to eat Cheerios every day and we don't care about our family for the next year, which that's not my situation. So I just wanted to share that kind of thought process I'm in right now.
I think that's fantastic. I just looked it up, and so Reid Hoffman is one of the authors, and he's the founder of LinkedIn, among other things. So he's pretty well known for fast scaling. So I will check that out. I also want to recommend to everybody. I don't know if you, and I've talked about this before, I'm not sure if I have in this class, but if any of you get a chance to read Viktor Frankl's book, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's really short. It's not a long book. And I personally, I carry it in my backpack. I mean, I pretty much have it with me all the time, but it's exactly what Sarah was just talking about. He was in the concentration camp, and one of the things that he did, he actually saw firsthand what happened with different choices that different people made. And just like Sarah just described, some people, just perished in that environment, and others grew really strong like him. I mean, it's an amazing story, but highly recommend Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. It's exactly on this subject. And I will save you a little bit of time. The secret that he talks about is retaining the ability to choose how you're going to respond to something that happens to you. Okay. So when you talk to people, sometimes they'll go, they'll give you a litany of all these things that they've had to overcome. And, you know, whether they're looking for sympathy or they just have a poor me mentality or a victim mentality, which is very, very common. It's an incredibly common personality trait. But, you know, they have given up on their ability to choose how they'll respond to something that happens, whether it's super busy or some tragedy or whatever. And they just throw up their hands, oh my God, I'm a victim, and you know, this is terrible. And there are others who say, well, this is true, but I'm going to think about this and I'm going to do the following. And so you're consciously choosing what you're going to do in response, no matter how horrific the input is or the thing that happens to you. As long as you retain that ability to make that choice, you will most likely survive. And that's the hypothesis of this book. So I was brought up really heavily on the victim type thing. My family, my mother, all her brothers, it was a shit show, let me tell you. But their mentality was, the reason their lives did not go as well as they wanted is because of all these external things that happened. And as I got older and started to meet other adults, what happened to those people made what happened to my family look like chicken liver, right? It was a joke. I mean, they really had problems, right? I mean, they were in a war, or people got killed or whatever. So I think that ability to retain the choice you're going to make because of the information you've just received or it happened to you is a really critical part of success in life, I think, and getting away from, blaming external things, no matter how it might be absolutely true, right? You might have really got screwed over in some way. I'm not saying it's not true, but you still, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, you have to choose, what are you going to do going forward? What's the choice you're going to make? And I struggle with it because it doesn't come naturally to me, but I highly recommend his book. And, I think there's some other YouTube videos and stuff. He's of course, he's been dead for quite some time at this point, but highly recommend it. Viktor Frankl, Life Search for Meaning. I do want to share one other thing with you guys that I ran across, and you may be familiar with it. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this company called Bubble, Bubble Goods.
We sell on that platform.
I'm sorry?
We sell on that platform.
Oh, tell me about it, and I'll explain it. But let me explain it a little bit to the group, and then
Go ahead. Yeah.
talk about it. So this is a marketplace that's aimed at primarily specialty foods and beverages. That's kind of their thing. Only they have a few other things, like I think they don't allow any product with, I don't know, cane sugar. I can't remember.
No sugar. No
Yeah.
sugar.
So it's got some sort of requirement in order to be listed here. But I was struck by the size in a relatively short period of time. They've gone from a couple of hundred products to several thousand, and they're starting to get a lot of publicity, in the mainstream press. I've seen, that's how I found them. So, some of you who might meet the requirement, I think you ought to look into it. But who was talking about that they already are on? I can't see you.
It's Sarah. It's Sarah. Yeah. I mean,
what do you think?
Yeah, I'll just be honest about my experience.
Please.
I love the idea. I love the platform, the way it looks, their whole clean label philosophy. But our sales are super dismal. We barely do any business with them. I've tried to get in on their marketing opportunities. I've even talked to the founder. We run the sales they do, we'll do the paleo sale and the vegan sale, and every now and then we'll get revenue from those promotions, but there's really no profit in that. We drop ship. So so I thought it might just be me or my brand, but I've talked to other brands on the platform, and I have yet to meet one founder who's happy with the sales they're doing on this platform. So I haven't yet to hear a success story from any of the brands, but I'd be interested in hearing that. I I just haven't found a way to succeed here.
I'll dig into it and see what I can find out. But I'm like you, I just, the idea of it really appealed to me. I like the way, it's kind of set up. Now it's a little bit of a different model in that, they charge a really high commission. It's like 35% of the sale, but they pay for the shipping and they do the customer service. So it's kind of sort of like Amazon in that respect, that it's a third party that's trying to do more than, just the basic, and exchange, that I'm sure the deal is, hey, we'll help you sell more. It sounds like they haven't figured that part out. But anyway, conceptually, I thought it was pretty cool. But thank you, Sarah. That's really, really helpful to get some perspective on that. All right. Well, that's the extent of what I have today. Tomorrow, we have Sarah's consultant, Kevin, can't pronounce his last name, Garonowski, I think. So he is an expert on getting onto different platforms like Amazon. And I think it'll be really interesting talking to him. He works with Sarah. Sarah sells on Amazon using his services. So Sarah, hopefully you can be here tomorrow, and embarrass him and make him tell the truth. No,
yeah, I'll be on.
Okay. But I think what I like about the idea of it, again, I'm always preaching, you can sell on all these platforms. What does that look like in the real world? What does it look like to actually sell on Amazon? And what's the reality of that process? The back end processes. I'm just anxious to kind of hear all that stuff. Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh no, yeah, I'm happy you're having him on, and he also has helped us get onto Instacart, and they have a team that does social media engagement as well. So yeah, it's definitely not a get rich quick kind of thing. What I like about him, like before he joins, is just that, you all probably get emails all the time from people promising a certain amount of sales or a certain amount of followers, if you use their services. And that to me is always a red flag. Like when someone dangles a carrot with like promised number of subscribers or buyers or increased revenue, no way. Like that's an instant delete. And he just never has done that. He's super realistic. And I just really appreciate his honesty. And in my experience, he's never, he won't even work with brands he doesn't think he can really help succeed.
That's cool. Well, that'll be tomorrow's class, and then Thursday we'll finish up on mental health. We'll have 2 more case studies of that, that's our week. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.